Hello mathematicians! This is the notes video for Chapter 3, Lesson 6, Part 2. The learning target is I can write linear equations in point-slope form. So here's a recap of point-slope form and the slope formula. So today we're going to be taking two different points and we're not given a slope. So we have to figure out the slope using the slope formula. If you remember, the slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I always call this the change in y over the change in x. How much does y change and how much does x change? Then you put the change in y over the change in x, and then you simplify and solve for the slope. Point-slope form of a linear equation. I know I already talked a little bit about point-slope form, but you can write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form when you know the slope and the y-intercept. You can write an equation of a line in point-slope form when you are given the slope and the coordinates of a point on the line that is not the y-intercept. So this is where point-slope form is useful, because you can write an equation of a line in point-slope form when you are given the slope and the coordinates of a point of the line that are not on the y-intercept. So that's when it's useful. And you can write it in this format. This is just another review that you can take a look at. Notice on the right-hand side it has the slope formula, just like I had on the last page. Okay, so let's try our first example. Write an equation in point-slope form and slope-intercept form for the line that passes through -1, 2, and has a slope of -1/2. So if you remember from our last lesson, I already showed us how to use the point-slope form when you're given a slope and one point. And so now I'm going to show us how to write that in slope-intercept form after we've put all the numbers into point-slope form. Okay, so I'm going to create my template using the point-slope form formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, and so I know that I can put these points into the point-slope form equation. So -1 is where x1 goes. So -1 will go here. So it's x minus a -1. And then 2 will go where this y1 goes. So 2 goes here. And then -1/2 goes where m is. That's my slope. Okay, so now that all the numbers are in the equation for point-slope form, all we have to do is solve for y on one side and then put it into the mx plus b format for slope-intercept form. So I'm going to rewrite this so that I simplify so that the negatives get changed to a positive at the end of the equation. Y minus 2 equals -1/2 times x plus 1. And then I'm going to use the distributive property and distribute out the -1/2 to the x and to the 1. So it's y minus 2 equals -1/2 x plus a -1/2. Because -1/2 times 1 is -1/2. Then I'm going to add 2 to both sides to get y by itself. Y equals -1/2 x plus 1/2. And so that's the y equals mx plus b format, also known as slope-intercept form. Okay, so for the slope-intercept form, it's y equals -1/2 x plus 1/2. And so that's the slope-intercept form. And then the point-slope form is the y minus 2 equals -1/2 times x minus 1. So that's the answer to this problem. Okay, so for example 2, we're going to write an equation in point-slope form and in slope-intercept form for the line that passes through 8, 1, and negative 2, 9. So first I have to find the slope using the slope formula. So I can substitute these values into the equation. So I'm going to take m equals y2, which is 9, minus y1, which is 1, over x2, which is negative 2, minus x1, which is positive 8. So minus 8, plus a negative 8. That's fine. Means the same thing. So 9 minus 1 is 8, and then negative 2 plus a negative 8 is negative 10. And then I can simplify that. So 8 over 10, both have a factor of 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my slope is negative 4/5. So m equals negative 4 over 5. Then when I'm putting it into these point slope formula, I can use either this point or this point. And just to make things easier, I'm going to use the 8, 1 for today. So I'm going to write my template, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So 8 is where the x1 goes, and then 1 is where the y1 goes. And then my slope, which is negative 4/5, goes in this spot. Okay, so now I'm just going to rewrite it so it looks prettier without the underlines. Y minus 1 equals negative 4/5 times x minus 8. Okay, then I'm just going to box it in, and that's my point slope form. And now I have to put it into the slope intercept form. So I'm just going to take the point slope form and solve for y on one side and put it into the mx plus b format. So I'm going to first distribute the negative 4/5 out to the x and to the negative 8. So negative 4/5 times x is just negative 4/5 x. And then negative 4 times negative 8 is positive 32. And then 32 divided by 5. So 5 goes into 32 6 times with 2 left over. So 2/5. So y minus 1 equals negative 4/5 x plus 6 and 2/5. And then if I add 1 to both sides to get y by itself, I'll get y equals negative 4/5 x plus 7 and 2/5. And that's my y equals mx plus b equation, or my slope-intercept form. Okay, so for example 3, it says write an equation in point-slope form and slope-intercept form for the line that passes through 3, 0 and 6, negative 3. First we have to find the slope. So I'm going to write negative 3 minus 0. So I just use my y2 minus my y1. And then I'm going to write 6 minus 3. So m equals negative 3 minus 0, which is just negative 3. And then 6 minus 3, which is positive 3. So negative 3 over 3 is just negative 1. So my slope is just negative 1. So now I can put all of my values into my template. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. y1, I'm just going to use these values, is 0. And then my x1 is 3, that goes here. and then my m, or my slope, is -1. So point slope form is y minus 0 equals -1 times x minus 3. So that's my point slope form. And then now I have to put it in slope intercept form by solving for y. So since it's -0, I can just write y equals, and then I can distribute the -1 to the x. -1 times x is just -x, and -1 times -3 is +3. So y equals -x plus 3, and that's my slope-intercept form for this problem. Example 4 says, write an equation in point-slope form and slope-intercept form for the line that passes through -1, 2, and 5, -10. So we're doing the same thing as the last two problems. First, we have to find the slope. So it's -10, which is y2, minus y1, which is +2, over 5 minus -1. Minus a negative is plus a positive. So my slope m is equal to -10 minus 2, or plus a -2, is -12. And then 5 plus 1, which is 6. So -12 over 6 is simplified to -2. Okay, so now I'm ready to write the equation in the point slope form. So my template is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And you can use either -1, 2, or coordinate 5, -10. So you could use either ordered pair. But just for the sake of things, I'm going to use -1 and 2. So I know that 2 goes where y1 goes, so 2 goes here. M, which is -2, goes in the m spot, and -1 goes in the y1 location. Minus a negative is plus a positive, and I'm going to rewrite that so it looks nicer. Y minus 2 equals -2 times x plus 1. So that's point slope form, and then I can write it in slope intercept form by solving for m and putting everything in the y equals mx plus b format. So y minus 2 equals, then I'm going to distribute out the -2 to the x, which is -2x, times -2 times +1, which is plus a -2. Then I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and to get y by itself. And then when I solve, this becomes 0, so I'm left with just y on the left, -2x plus -2 plus 2, which is just 0. So my y equals mx plus b slope-intercept equation is just y equals -2x. Okay, so then your practice will be to do problems 1, 2, and 3 from yesterday's lesson, and you're just going to finish the second half of those problems by finding the slope-intercept, and then work on 4, 5, and 6.